and welcome to the Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Dunigan, and I know we did the Office Space one last week, but for whatever reason, it feels like it's been a while since we did this.
I guess it has been. It's probably been just like a couple days over a week or something like that. And now we're at like episode 350, like our Ruby and Sapphire generation of episodes. That's the point we're at now.
Is that where they had 350 in the count?
You know, I'm not too sure exactly if it's that exact number, because I know that gold and silver was 250, you know, red and blue is 150. So you always feel like it's like 100 every single time, but it might have got to a point where they're like, here's 50, or here's 73, here's an odd number. I'm not too sure.
Mm-hmm. No, I get you, yeah. They eventually just reach that. You can tell they're kind of running out of characters. Like, what's this one? It pretends to be Pikachu? What's this one? It's, looks around him. A sandcastle? What the fuck's a sandcastle doing in this room? I don't know.
Yeah, they got some weird ones, but then they always will surprise me. They'll always have some, like, Pokemon, you're like, that's fucking awesome. Like, there always is that creative idea, and then there's the one like, well, we have to have 850 now, so we got... So, Jim, you got 24 hours. Fill it up. Jim who? Jim Hirasashi.
Jim Short.
Jim Hirasashi's been working all night long fucking making extra Pokemon. He hasn't slept in 72 hours or seen his family.
There's this really good... I already told you about this channel. I didn't talk on the podcast. There's this really good channel on YouTube called Video Game Storytime, I think. And it's by a couple, but the lady narrating it has the most soothing, most relaxing British accent you've ever heard in your entire life.
Uh-huh.
And she kind of goes over video game history, and she tells it as if it's a storybook. Now, it sounds like it's kind of like, really? What? But it may sound kind of weird, but it's actually done really well. And it's not just the obvious ones like, oh, here's Mario, here's Yuji Naka or Shigeru Miyamoto or whatever. They go down the list of a bunch of ones. Like, they have one on Hideo Kojima. They have one on more modern gamers and creators and all that. They want one on Christian Whitehead, actually. Mm-hmm. And just kind of goes over their story and how the game came out and kind of how it's just like, oh, okay, so it's an optimistic story of how these games got made and the personal struggle that people had to go through them. They had one, the very first episode is actually on the guy who created Pokemon. And apparently that game was just glitchy as hell before it came over. And it was like, it took 6 or 7 years for them to actually make the game because it went from being like video game writers, like a magazine company, independent magazine company, to like, hey, give us a shot. And Shigeru Miyamoto was like, yeah, let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I know how that kind of story goes. Now, you say they always put an optimistic spin on it. I'm just waiting for, like, the story of, like, the guy who created the Game Boy, and then it's like, everything is great! Everything is awesome! What are you gonna do next? Oh, I'm gonna go for the VR route! We're gonna do the Virtual Boy! And then he does that, and Nintendo's like, you're a complete failure. You're a disgrace to the Nintendo name. And then, you know, only, like, a handful of months later, he gets in that car accident and dies. I just want to see their, like, optimistic spin on that one.
The spin on that is you don't do that story. That's how you do that.
There's not a challenge in that, though. I want to see them, like how do they do that? How do they pull it out? Like, you know what I mean?
They would, if I had to guess, they'd probably do something about legacy. It'd be like, despite the long, despite some sad endings, legacies ultimately live on, and whatever. I could imagine it being something to that effect. Mm-hmm. So look down a couple of them when you can. There's some things about more recent modern games that I didn't know about that are pretty interesting. So yeah.
Well, yeah, there's always those cool stories.
I didn't know that game though. Mm-hmm. I didn't know the game was actually. They almost didn't bring it over to America just because the thing was so glitchy and like, Americans won't want this. Like, fuck yeah, Americans want this. Figure it out. And they had to get the guy who created Earthbound to come in. I think it was the guy who created Earthbound come in, and he's the guy who passed away a few years ago, to come in and just like unglitch everything.
Yeah, they had the CEO of Nintendo was the guy who came in and, you know, he's like, let me roll up my sleeves and get my programming skills out. You know, almost like how you expect in a movie. You know what I mean? Like when somebody shows up to the scene and they just happen to have some type of computer skills. This only really works in like 90s and early 2000 movies. And they're just like, wait a second. And roll up their sleeves. They're like, I got this. Click, 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 click. Which I just feel like in real life, even if you knew computers really well, it just does not happen that quick, no matter what.
Or he just like Mr. Wolfed his way from Pulp Fiction in there.
Yeah, exactly. Just to fucking clean up the mess.
Show me the problem. Walks in. There's like a 1997 computer.
Just like
just looking at it,
his fucking
examining
parts
it.
just all over the back seat of his car for some reason. There's like computer chips like stuck in the ceiling. There's like a cord hanging out the window.
Green tea. Lots of honey.
What happened? Well, we're transporting this computer over for programming, and the gun just sort of went off. Why'd you have a gun pointed at? Well, I didn't want it to go anywhere. Where was it gonna go? It's a computer. I don't know. I saw Terminator last night. I started to get fearful.
Then I started thinking about what if Sony's following us, and I figured I'd pull a gun. If they found it, we'd just break it before Sony found it.
Yeah, it seemed logical until the bullet went off.
It's like, yeah. We're gonna make this thing happen. We're gonna get a bunch of white kids to buy some Pokemon bullshit. All right?
Yeah,
Get on it.
believe me,
Green tea now.
they'll be into it. Once they have it, they might not know what they want it, but they'll want it the second that it's there.
Yeah.
That's why I love that. I have the poster from like Nintendo Power in my room, and it says like Pokemon coming to a Game Boy soon. And it's like, oh, dude, it's before anybody even fucking knew what this was all. This was gonna be such a big world-changing event.
I guess it's kind of weird when you think... Well, first off, it's weird knowing that thing's like 20, 25 years old now. But it's also even weird to me because I remember it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. I know everybody says that, but it still feels like something kind of new to me. But like, oh, wait, that was back in 5th grade. Because Mario and Zelda, well, those came out... Well, those came out before I was even born, but those seem like they've been here for even longer. But when you kind of see something kind of come into, like, even Sonic. I mean, I was born before Sonic, but that still seems like a long time to me. Pokemon just still somewhat seems, to an effect, kind of like the new kid on the block to me compared to other Nintendo franchises. I don't know why.
Well, no, I kind of agree, too, because it's almost like the classic legacy of Nintendo would be your Link, Mario, Samus. I'd even say Captain Falcon by that standard, too. Anything kind of regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo era. So Pokemon, even though it's in Japan-wise, it's still that era. But I think, because that's what makes it feel older. It's like, it's like in Japan, it's 1996. And that sounds fucking old when you hear it like that. But you're like, well, wait a second. It's 1998 for America. And even still, like 99's kind of like when it hit that like super popularity. Because at first it was just kind of there like any other game. And then all of a sudden, it took off.
Yeah, well, I remember just seeing like ads for it, just saying in Nintendo Power and whatever. I'm like, all right, that thing looks Japanese. Don't know what the fuck it is, but no, we'll find out, I guess. And then just kind of stumbling across the show and actually getting into it by the show, and then getting more in. Like, the thing is weird. The show was my gateway to that thing, but then I kind of lost a lot of interest in the show as time went on and kind of got more into the games. I don't play the games as frequently, but I mean, whenever I pick up one of those games, it's a fun time, so yeah.
Yeah, no, Pokemon still holds up like amazingly well for me. It's like, it's something I look more forward to than almost any other game when I really think about it. I'm like, God, because Pokemon just never let you down game-wise. They always are good. Even if they're kind of, I know that like the one complaint could be, it's like, oh, they're always kind of similar, and there's so many, it's like, yeah, there is that. But at the same time, though, it's just, that magic is there no matter what. Every single time you're like, God damn, I remember exactly why I love this time period so much in my life. And I mean, it's that thing. It's like, obviously, I think if you're literally 10, like when Pokemon comes out, it's like you were literally like, you cannot get more of like the generation than being the exact age of that character the second that game comes out. Like, that's why I think that game was like literally made for us, like by far. Like, we were the target audience to 100%, and that's always kind of cool. And I think that's what makes Pokemon stick around even more than that, because even like, I guess you could say Sonic the Hedgehog, technically its target audience when it first came out was for somebody born in like 1982. If you think about it, who's the 10-year-old boy of 1991? Something like that. But for Pokemon, it was like, that was right there, that was then. And it's kind of like, as like with Pokemon, like I've been on this like Tomb Raider kind of marathon for a while, and that's like the exact same time period. When I think Pokemon, like the same memories of like Tomb Raider and Crash Bandicoot and anything on the N64 all kind of like come together in this like swirl of like late 90s magic. And just playing Tomb Raider again just always gives it. Now I'm playing the ones in the 2000s. I'm playing like that middle generation that nobody ever fucking talks about, but they're like fucking amazing games. But it still gives you like this, like, God damn, it's like that was a good time. God, the late 90s never gets fucking old.
Well, Tomb Raider is also one of those things. Like, what point did it start to fade away? Was the game where everyone thought she was dead at the end, and then they came out with the game like, oh nope, she's actually alive?
No, I think because that was Tomb Raider. I want to say it was Tomb Raider 4, but I could be wrong by this point. But it was Tomb Raider 6 was the one that kind of like almost like kind of killed that franchise. And I'll still say this, I think it still killed it today because of that game. And also, there's probably a couple things that go into it. I think by releasing a Tomb Raider every single year kind of burnt people out pretty quick. I mean, you could say almost Tomb Raider was pulling the Assassin's Creed thing before Assassin's Creed. You don't think about it because doesn't like when you think about Tomb Raider, it doesn't cross your mind that there was 6 of them like almost like consecutive. There's 5 in a row, and then there was like 1 year off, and then number 6 came, and that was the one that was on PS2, the Angel of Darkness one, and it was the game that like they rushed it, I think, to try to compete with Metal Gear Solid 2. Never a good idea to compete with Metal Gear. That's always your first problem. Whenever you're using the words "we're gonna compete with Metal Gear Solid," don't bother. Just wait and have your glory some other time.
That is literally a tortoise in the hare kind of situation. Hideo's like, "Don't worry, we'll get there." And then like, what's Activision? What made Tomb Raider
Eidos.
at that time? Eidos is like, "No, man, we gotta do it now. We gotta do it." Just like, then all of a sudden they just like trip, stumble, fall over, break their fucking neck. Here comes Hideo. Told you, bitch. Just walking by.
Yeah, and I don't think they tried to outbeat Metal Gear Solid like in time frame because I think it still came out afterwards. But it was just like they're trying, really at the end of the day, Metal Gear Solid 2 set the bar for a lot of games, and I think some series almost like rushed a little too hard to get to it because I think Tomb Raider was so used like to their like 1 year time span, but that was fine when you already created your engine, and now you got something brand new. You got a new engine, and then they try to implement all these different elements in there and so on. And it was just almost like too much good stuff at once that came into like a crash of everything. And that game, like I've kind of heard because I've never really played it. Because I didn't have a PS2 at that time period when it came out anyways, and I think that kind of made me like not have that, let alone a lot of these other Tomb Raider games that sadly I missed when they did come out. But I think what it did is, because that game came out, and it was almost like, here's this big franchise, oh look, they fucking failed, let's point and laugh at them while they're on the fucking ground, because that's almost just what people, that was what we learned from the 90s. Shit, when I was just looking at a bunch of video game ads just recently from the 90s, everything about it is just how to put the other guy down. That was just all it was. So you got early 2000s fucking 90s kids pointing and laughing at a franchise failing in front of them. And I think by that point, it was almost like a lot of games can't seem to make the jump from generation. You know what I mean? Like, you could be the best fucking game ever on one console. The second it gets to the next console, it's funny how that just goes, you just start to fade away. It's not that you necessarily become a bad game or that people aren't playing you. You go from being like the top dog to being sort of like, second rate, third string quarterback, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Not all the time, but that seems to be primarily with Sony more than Nintendo and Microsoft. Because even Microsoft held on to Master Chief for a while.
Well, I'll use Master Chief as an example. I feel like Master Chief is now like a third string quarterback as far as gaming. He should be at the top, but like somehow, some way, Microsoft found a way to kind of like. And I guess you might be able to say, because I really like the last big moment of Halo was Halo 3, and since then, it's not that Halo 4 and it's not that Halo Reach and even Halo 5 are like bad games. They're still really fun, but something was just lost, and even maybe it was just one of those ones like, by the time it got to the end of 360, people started getting into something else. I think because here's the thing. You got the average gamer's only going to buy so many games a year and whatever. And sometimes at some point, I think they just get kind of burnt out on the franchise. You know what I mean? The hardcore fans, obviously, they'll take every single game they could possibly get, But there's just the kind of people like, well, yeah, I like Tomb Raider. It was fun for a couple of them. And then after a while, it's like, yeah, same old over and over again. I don't, and I think that kind of happens with other games. It's like, think about Halo. Is Halo really that different every single time? Yeah, they fix small little things there, and they add little things there, and I guess you're playing for the story, but overall, as a core game, it's kind of the same thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing with a lot of first-person and third-person shooters. It's kind of hard to add. I mean, you can always add to the spoke to anything, but I think that's the reason why I'm not so impressed or so excited for most first-person shooters that come out. I mean, what's the new Call of Duty spin on this one? It's in World War II again. I'm sure it's a fun, fully functional game that it runs really smooth, but it's at the same time it's like
Been there,
I've
done
been
that.
there. I've seen that. Yeah. Now I know maybe this generation hasn't really played World War II as much. I guess that's the other thing. World War II is slowly starting to become more of a I don't want to use the word fabled time, but it's almost like all the World War II survivors are dying off now. So it's coming to that point like, oh yeah, this is soon going to be like one of those times where you can't turn to somebody and say, hey, it happened like this, right? Oh, wait, never mind, you're gone.
Yeah, exactly. Because I just remember being a kid and being like, you could still find a World War I veteran. That was still the time period we were at. And now you practically can't even find a World War II veteran. You know, it's that's so rare anyways. But with Tomb Raider, like I started playing these. There's the ones in the dead center. They're almost like, I guess you could say, the second generation of Tomb Raider games, and they came out between like kind of PS2 to about PS3. And there was like Legend. Then they did a Tomb Raider 1 remake, and then they did one called Underworld. And somehow, some way, I played them backwards, like in some why I don't know, just kind of how it happened. But
no judgment here.
yeah, it's just like that. When it's like, fuck it, I'm gonna play them backwards. Why? Because I can. Because I'm American. God damn it. And these games are fucking amazing. And I know that when these games came out, they had good ratings. I remember looking at them, and for years I kept going like, I should get that game. I should get that game. Then they had a PS3 collection. I'm like, you know what? I should get that game. And then, that's just kind of how it is. There's only so much time in life for so many games that sometimes you just don't get around to certain things. And then it's like, like maybe a year or two ago, I bought them on Steam for like $1.50 a piece. And then I finally have just really gotten to them. And, I played Uncharted 5 because that was on sale or whatever. So I was like, okay, I played Uncharted. Now I feel like playing Tomb Raider again. I'm like, oh, wait a second. I got all those Tomb Raider games sitting there on my Steam account. Let's do that then. And there's something special about, like I just love going back and playing that PS2. More like that PS2, Xbox, GameCube era, but you play the PC version of the game instead, because it's almost like you get a completely different game for how fucking good they look on the PC, especially because, here's the thing, if you would have had a PC in 2003, you probably would not have had the money to have it be all rigged up anyway, so it's just going to look slightly better than your Xbox and so on. But now, when you got, like, a PC that's powerful enough to, like, these games to run them all, like, on Ultra mode, it's pretty sweet playing them like that. You're like, oh, this is almost like, it's this weird thing, you're playing an old game, but it almost looks like a new game in this, like, weird middle place.
Mm-hmm. Well, out of curiosity, because Tomb Raider is one of those games where I never really was into Tomb Raider so much. I went over to other friend's house, and they'd have the games. They keep up on them. I played a little bit there. Is that one? Do you think people just got burnt out on it because it was just kind of a little bit of platforming with tank controls, and then people just got tired of seeing Lara Croft like half naked or almost naked, like on the cover of every other video game magazine after a while?
Well, I think people got, a little bit burnt. I think really what did it in is probably releasing a game, like just releasing 6 games in 7 years. That doesn't help anything. Like people, it's too many people, they want to jump on that and just try to make their money here and there. But if you ever notice, like every video game that generally has a good lasting legacy, mostly they're spanned apart. Like I use Zelda as an example. I mean, there's always going to be a couple Game Boy games and so on in between. But for the most part, like a new Zelda game almost never comes out more than like every 5 to 7 years. They really wait. And if you ever notice, every single time one generally comes out, it's always a big freaking deal. Like almost like biggest game deal of like the last couple of years. So I think with Tomb Raider, it's just kind of like boom, 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 boom. And then it's like they had this sort of break. They're like, oh shit, number 6 didn't do good. Let's pull back, whatever. They got a brand new team in, which is the same team that made the Rise of the Tomb Raider and the Tomb Raider kind of the second reboot recently. And they made these 3 games that were like fucking awesome. But I just think just the average audience, because like remember, they got good reviews and everything like that. But just the average audience just wasn't really there for them. And I think just it was almost like they lost it after that 6th one of not doing so well, too many. And then when I think it switched into like a new generation, it was just a time period where it's like, okay, what's new now? Okay, Grand Theft Auto's new, Halo's new, and so on. Resident Evil 4 reinvented itself really well. Where these Tomb Raiders more like, they're fucking dialed in Tomb Raiders. They're almost like, if you want the old world experience of Tomb Raider, but with kind of like, I guess you could say a little bit more modern controls and feel, these games give you that to the T. But yeah, it's just one of those ones, like it was just that kind of lost Tomb Raider section of like the games, and people they talk highly about these new ones, but it's like these games right here built that fucking foundation for those new ones. I mean, it's the same team.
Mm-hmm. Well, Do you think it's just one of those things like it's the brand that? Because I noticed because they put a lot of. I never played the new one, but I know they put a lot of work and effort into the new ones, and like you said, they got good reviews. Do you think people are just kind of like, oh yeah, Tomb Raider, I might get it later? But I mean, clearly the first one did enough to get a sequel. Are they working on a third one? Because I got the movie coming out.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that because here's the thing: there's still Tomb Raider fans. It's not. It's one of those series where you just because you're not like a like a AAA title anymore doesn't mean that you can't still be like you can't have this core group of audience. It's kind of like Castlevania. Castlevania is another game too. It doesn't have a big group of fans, but the hardcore group that likes it keeps it kind of going. Even if they haven't had a Castlevania game in a while, but it's still there. There's just certain ones where there is that audience. And this movie, hopefully the movie might do a turnaround. I know to me, it's like, I'm looking super forward to the movie. I think that's fucking awesome. I'm excited. But what I've just kind of seen in like the recent years is that nobody fucking really plays Tomb Raider anymore. So I hope that doesn't pull this movie back because of that. You know what I mean? It's one of those ones. It's funny. There's a lot of people that play Uncharted, but it's almost like they forget that like Tomb Raider's here and that Uncharted really just aped everything from Tomb Raider. And I'm not saying Uncharted's not a good game. Uncharted is a really fun game. It's like kind of almost like the child's version of Tomb Raider as far as gameplay goes. I mean, I know you can make it difficult by putting it up, but as far as it goes, it's a very like hold your hand ride. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is just like it's totally made to be like, hey, you want just a really fun story experience where like you generally just have a good time the whole way through? That's what Uncharted is. Where Tomb Raider is more like you want to think and watch yourself die many a times and you'll figure it out though. It's like real life,
Well, I didn't realize how when Laura dies in the newer Tomb Raider games, they make it as brutal, as uncomfortable as possible. Because I saw someone breaking down, kind of like, well, here's the thing about the movie. I'm not worried about the movie because she's going to live by the end of the movie, obviously. But the thing about the game is there's this whole other sense of dread because when she died real bad, and they showed just a couple of different clips of her just like she's tumbling down a hill and then like a part of a branch impales her through the neck and she's trying to reach for it. So it's like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Well, that's in like the cutscene ones,
Mm-hmm. Well,
But,
is there certain,
yeah.
like, I thought that would happen, like something big like...
That's like
I
if you
think it was
fail the
later.
cutscene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, yeah, no, it's like, that always is. You just always watch, like, fucking Laura. That's like half the game is just watching yourself just fucking die horribly because the decision you made was not right. That's always what it is. It's just like, well, I guess I'm not jumping that direction.
Yeah. No, well, I don't know. I'm going to have to... I've been actually just been slowly taking my time on Breath of the Wild. Just I'll pick that game up. I'll get frustrated on a tempo, then pick it back up and play it again. So that's been taking most of my time. And after that, playing again on Mario Odyssey. So...
No, those ones are definitely really good ones. But, no, it's been fun kind of going through just this middle generation of Tomb Raider that I never played. Because I played the original ones, most of them at least, not all of them, but played quite a bit of those, and played the new ones, and just this middle section is just totally awesome. I mean, because my only kind of complaint to the first like reboot of Tomb Raider was that it just didn't have enough animals in it. Because I'm like, dude, the whole point of Tomb Raider is you very rarely actually shoot people. You're always shooting animals and things like that. And to me, I think that's more scary, and that's kind of like cooler anyways. You just don't see that very often in video games. Is actually like, fuck, oh, there's a jaguar that's gonna jump out and get you, or there's a fucking gorilla pack coming for you, and so on, or a T-Rex or a velociraptor. And so the first one was like really doing the first one almost you could say is like a slight sellout game. It does something completely original, but you could tell that they're like, okay, let's be kind of like Uncharted, because that's what Uncharted always is. Uncharted, you're generally just shooting humans like 95% of the time. So they kind of go that, but it's not like a bad thing. It still like works in its favor, and then they add the survival element a little bit farther, and it gives a little bit of like a slight RPG and so on. Like, I fucking love that game, and the second one really finally starts adding just about everything you could want in it, and I still think of that game as being the best game on PS4, Xbox One, whatever. This generation, Rise of the Tomb Raider, I don't think there's anything better than that game. But nobody really fucking played that game at the same time, too. That's the sad part about it.
Guess I'll have to go ahead and get that one. If you said that, you think it's one of the best games on this generation.
I've been saying that for like the last like 3 or 4 years. There's never been a game that I think that was just as cool as that game. It's just like one of those ones like, it was fucking so dialed in. The gameplay, because that's the thing. It's like Uncharted, the story is like the Uncharted's like strong part. It's like the story's really good. The gameplay's fun, but it's like it's definitely like almost like as casual as you can get. Not saying it can't be challenging, but it's almost like an arcade game, I guess is the best way to say it. You know what I mean? Simple controls, for a modern game, and kind of gameplay, but it's still really fun and it can be challenging. Where Tomb Raider was just like this, like you had a lot going on, and not like in a bad, overwhelming way, but there was just so much cool stuff in that game.
No, yeah, I get you. It's just one of those franchises that I feel like that there's those franchises that there's a little bit more to them than people give them credit for, and it's kind of easy to forget that, like, oh yeah, this was cool for a minute, now it's kind of lame again. Like, no, let's give it a second chance. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I always thought Jak and Daxter was a fun franchise. Remember they had like, here's the official 4th Jak and Daxter, but it's for PSP, so no one played it.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of surprised that they haven't brought back Jak and Daxter. I know it's kind of a PlayStation thing, though, is to take your fucking characters and, like, toss them out on the curb the second that you get to, like, a new... It's, like, almost like a new system pulls up, and they're like, oh, everyone's like, dude, who's getting in for the party? And everything like that. And then, like, Mr. Sony steps up like, nope, you guys, get the fuck out of here. Here's your severance pay, you're out of here. But we're not going on PS4? Nope. You looks like you're stuck with PS3. And I know that Tomb Raider's technically not a PlayStation game. I know it kind of gets associated with it. It's on mostly everything else, too. But it feels way more at
surgery.
home. It just
she got
like
plastic surgery. Let back through the door.
Yeah, Tomb Raider always just felt like when you think Tomb Raider, it's kind of like Resident Evil. Even though like I almost associate Resident Evil with Nintendo more nowadays, but like in the early days, it felt very PlayStation. Though you could get it on Sega Saturn, though you could get it on PC and Dreamcast and so on, it still felt like a PlayStation kind of game almost. But yes, I'm almost surprised that Sony's even making another God of War game. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, well, that one actually looks really good. Oh no, doesn't matter. That one actually looks really good to me, though, the new God of War. And I liked the first God of War, but as time went on, I just had trouble rooting for Kratos, because, I don't know, I understand he's not meant to be a good guy, but he's just such a big fucking dick. And I just had trouble, and I know, it was the ancient Greek times, but the game played well, and the graphics were great, but I just had trouble getting behind this guy. And this one, though, it looks like they're doing the whole Logan thing, like, got a kid going with me. I'm all grizzled. I regret my past. I regret my life,
No, I'm just more surprised that they actually are making a God of War game, because that stretches back to PS2 era. And there's, think about how many other series get and that's pure Sony, but Sony's just always kind of known for tossing their series to the curb. So it's actually kind of it's almost more impressive that they're carrying that one farther forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, Uncharted, though, that was also one of the few ones that kind of moved forward, too, wasn't it?
Well, that started in PS3, though, so it's not that long ago, technically.
Yeah, I guess it started at the beginning of PS3 and ended in the middle of PS4, roughly.
Yeah,
right?
And, and that one they might continue making and so on. And, like, a lot of times they go like that, so that's still farther, but it's like, in the olden days, it seemed to be, like, almost like you had one system run just about, and that was it, you know what I mean? Like, you had Crash Bandicoot, second PS2 comes, get the fuck out of here. Then you got PS2, and you got, like, okay, we got Jak and Daxter, we got Sly Cooper, we got Ratchet and Clank, and then almost like the second the PS3 comes, and I know that they had, like, collections and so on, but it's almost like, get the fuck out of here. We got Uncharted now. You know what I mean? And I don't know why Sony does that, you know what I mean? Like, Sega just doesn't make their games anymore, so I mean, I guess that's one of those ones that's just everybody's fucking out of work. They're all at the unemployment line. Axel and Blaze have been waiting. They're like, one of these days, old Mr. Sega's gonna give a call. He's gonna need somebody to fight the streets, and, he's gonna do it. He's just gonna do it. And you just see the Golden Axe guy just kind of look, just like, just give it fucking up. Just give it up, man. You know what I mean? Just be grateful you get this welfare check. That's all it is. And then Sonic kind of runs in. He's like, oh, whoa, hey guys. Oh, you guys are still getting paid, right? Right? I just want to make sure I do my little charity donation at every 1% of Sonic cash. Make sure to go back to the rest of you guys. Want to make sure you guys are doing okay.
Sorry, got some construction going on down below, so that's why you're hearing this drilling.
That's okay.
No, but no, like, you just see the GGs, like, their wheels on their roller skates don't fucking work anymore. They just have to kind of slowly walk and kind of like slightly slip as they do so. And he's every once in a while, he's like, "Hey guys, there's an opening slot for our Mario Kart ripoff racer game." Like, oh, they're like just like
beating each other up trying to get for it, like. There's only 30 slots. Fucking throws the keys on the ground. Go for it.
Who wants it most? I feel like, well, that's even also how like the PlayStation Battle Royale game felt to some extent, because some of the characters in there, it just kind of proved, because they didn't really have. I mean, I'm wrong. They had some cool characters there, but it proved that some of the characters just don't have the longevity. It's like, okay, girl from Heavenly Sword, who we haven't seen since PlayStation 3.
Well, that was kind of
Rapper.
relevant. That was relevant at the time when that came up. That was sort of their new character. I mean, now in hindsight, it seems kind of odd, but
it was a character they literally just kicked to the side. It was a character that had that one game, and we never saw her again. Where Papa the Rapper, he was there for at least like 3 games, at least.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where that game feels kind of more like, I feel like Sony is like, Sega is bad alcoholic dad who does not watch after his kids. That's Sega.
And has
Sony
a lot of kids too. He almost forgets their
like,
names.
Yeah, Sonic's the only one he really pays a whole lot of attention to, but he's still not even a good dad about that.
And Alex the kid's always like, he's like, I'm the oldest child. I'm the oldest one. It's like, yeah, and you turn out to be fucking gay. Get out of here, Alex the kid. He's like, it's Alex Kid. Nobody gives a fuck what your name is.
Reason I don't invite you over on Thanksgiving no more. You always pull this shit. Tell you what, I'm more likely to bring them Golden Axe bowls than you.
At least they're a bunch of men.
Sony sounds more of like kind of just the bad like manager or bad agent who's having trouble finding you a gig. He says like, oh, I got you something at the equivalent of the state fair, which for Sony characters, that's that Battle Royale game.
Well, yeah, it's almost like, and also that's like the manager who, whenever they find fresh talent, they seem to kind of forget about the old roster.
Very much so.
You know, because
like, baby, you'll do wonderful right over here.
And this is what I feel bad about. That PlayStation Battle Royale game is fucking an awesome game. Like, it's one of those ones like, yeah, you could say it's a Smash Bros. Ripoff. That is not a bad thing whatsoever. That game is so cool, and I'm so bummed that game, if it would have had a sequel, I think that would have been totally, like, you know, because that's what it just needed. It's just like, I feel like that was the first one. That was the first attempt, and it's really fucking good. I mean, yeah, there's some characters. It's like, be kind of cool if you had a couple more things in there, and almost if you did a little bit, like, even though it's not Sony, if you had a little bit more of, like, kind of like what you think of when you think PlayStation. And I think maybe if they did a second one, you finally could. Or I'm even so surprised they never even made a PlayStation 4 remaster of that game. Because I think that game just needed almost a second chance. I just think that when it came out, it was just almost, it was easy for every Nintendo fan to go, Smash Brothers ripoff, fuck you guys, think you're so fucking special. But if you played it, it was like, dude, this is sick. It's Smash Bros. But with different characters. What's not to like?
No, I get that, and I've played that game at your place. It's a fun game. I'm just thinking in the context of when you start reaching for characters that aren't even your own characters, and you're just like, okay, the Big Daddy from BioShock, even though that's on Xbox also. Raiden from Metal Gear Lightning. I guess Dante from Devil May Cry. You know, so it's when they're kind of, it just kind of shows right there. I know all those characters have been on there, but it just kind of shows that they don't have enough of their own history. Where Nintendo is just like, yeah, let's bring Sonic on. Why? Why the fuck not? Mega Man? Mega Man's in a bunch of Nintendo games. Sure thing.
Yeah. No, and I get that too, but it is one of those ones, like, I think if you had a second one and you almost want to say, like, let's do almost like the PlayStation Legacy type games, and you could almost even have like, here's a Resident Evil character, and here's, you know, let's have Lara Croft in there, and let's have, you know, just Crash Bandicoot. That was like the one I always felt like, I'm like, come on, how expensive can Crash Bandicoot to be to fucking license out? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why they didn't put Crash Bandicoot on there. I think that's almost kind of what. They had characters on there, but it was almost like you had to be hardcore into PlayStation to get the characters. I think they need a couple of just, like, characters like Crash Bandicoot that's like, oh, fuck, Crash Bandicoot's in there, and some other things like that.
Well, that kind of has me wondering, was Crash Bandicoot just the character they advertised to their American audience? Was that the character they're advertising to in Japan? That has me wondering.
Well, they had Japanese commercials and all kinds of stuff for Crash Bandicoot. I know it's made in the U.S., but it's made in America, but I think it was still sold in Japan, like, pretty well. People like Crash.
That's okay. That kind of surprised me because he looks more of, well, I guess that's so weird to me because Sonic is a Japanese character essentially made for Americans, and Crash is a in that case, Crash is a American character
Made
ripping
for
off
Australians.
a Japanese character that was aimed for. What? He's Australian?
Made almost for like Australian people. That's how it just goes. Because everything in Crash Bandicoot has like an Australian kind of theme. I think just because of like those kind of animals.
I was thinking. I didn't even think about the Australian aspect of it. I
mean, it's not like people have Australian accents,
maybe. I was thinking like maybe. I mean, it's the '90s, so it makes sense. But I guess like a ska band, like he's wearing cargo shorts, no shirt, has gloveless finger, like has like a fingerless gloves. Looks like he could be like maybe the lead singer to the animal version of the lead singer to Sugar Ray or some shit.
Yeah, played in Goldfinger.
I know they're not a ska band,
like,
but it has that kind of vibe. Like if you had like licensed music, I imagine it would have had like something like Goldfinger or Real Big Fish, or maybe even like
Mighty Mighty Boss Tones.
I don't know, something off the Digimon soundtrack. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It is kind of one of those ones like that, but and I think that's almost the thing is because see, if you think about it, like as far as lasting legacy characters, it's like Nintendo knows 100% how to make a character. Perfect example is like you look at fucking Mario Odyssey. Fucking like hands down game of the year by like a lot of people. Just like it's easily like you let somebody play that game and they'll be like, oh fuck, this game is pure amazing. I mean, I guess the only way I feel if somebody says no, it's not even fucking close to a game of the year, they probably never played the game because they didn't see the magic. And that's the thing is Nintendo can take a character who's fucking like 1981 fucking old and still make it like, here you go, here's one of the biggest things you ever will play this year. Boom, fuck you. You know what I mean? It's like, and I think that's what creates that legacy where these other companies kind of like when you just toss your fucking characters to the curb and try to go on with whatever's. Well, PlayStation always feels like it has that feeling like, yo, this is it. This is whatever year this is the year. You know what I mean? Where Nintendo's more like, remember the good old days, kids. Remember when fun was a thing? Yeah, so do we, Nintendo.
I feel like, you know what I think it is? I think it's kind of since, we may have said this before, but since Crash Bandicoot was a little bit more of a Sonic ripoff, Sonic was very of the moment, and I think the only thing that really has made Sonic last this long is just his design. He's such a well-designed character. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, they'll get a pretty good game in there. But more recent years, at least. And I think something like Mario's never strayed too far away. It's like, okay, how do we get this weird this weird how do I put this? This weird kind of classic look today and kind of give it that same vibe but still not feel like we're talking down to our audience. So how there's so many games that are just like, oh, I liked that when I was a kid, then I moved on. And where you get a bunch of people still looking forward to the new Mario game.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I mean. It's like Nintendo stuff like transcends everything else. I feel Sega could. That's the thing about Sega is I feel Sega could. It's just they don't put enough effort into like their other things because at the end of the day, let's just say if Sega made a Smash Brothers and they put like all their shit in there. I mean, obviously now granted this only goes towards Sega fans because I think a lot of this stuff gets kind of lost to other people. But their roster is way bigger than fucking Nintendo's. But the thing is that Sega just it's almost like they gave up before. I don't know why they gave up almost. You know what I mean? Like, they should have all these extra games based off their characters, and they just, for some reason, never did. It's weird. It's like I guess you could say they're no different than Sony, where some of their characters never seem to last longer than about one system's length. But still, it's like, come on, Sega. To this day, I still go, why don't they just pull out from their fucking magic hat all these franchises? They don't even need to fucking invent anything new anymore. They can just use all, like, 50 franchises they have just sitting there waiting.
They'll probably do that. Actually, no, they probably won't. I don't know why I said that. That's just my go-to. They'll probably do that someday. No, they won't. I have no idea what Sega's doing. Like the only thing that's really keeping them going is just random, like I think, pachinko machines, gambling machines, Sonic, and cell phone games. Because they even said, I remember, like I said this some time back, but they even said, like in an interview, like most cold, calculated thing, like. Yes, we're laying a bunch of people off. Sound very unapologetic about it. We are getting rid of our American branch of Sonic team. Like, don't give a fuck. Like, oh Jesus, all right. He says like, and like we plan on containing the Sonic property. They say like not Sonic the Hedgehog, not like this false kind of like oh yes, it's so sad, but we wish him luck. But we will continuing making more fun adventures for Sonic. No, the Sonic brand will continue through cell phones and possibly other platforms. Just like, jeez, you guys are some cold-blooded motherfuckers.
Yeah, see, I like to have an optimistic view that I think that hopefully one of these days somebody's going to come in who grew up playing everything Sega and be like, you know what, I'm taking over this company and we're going to do it right, goddammit. Like, I'm hoping that kind of free-spirited individual shows up in there. It's easy to write that off, like, they're never going to fucking do it again, but I like to keep out hope. You just never know. Somebody might turn the corner. Same with Capcom, same with Konami. You never know. It's just going to take, we're just at a dark time period. All it's going to take is somebody who's, you know what, gambling's not the future. Let's get back to gaming.
You know what? Now that because we're at the point like, okay, what? There is that Shantae Genie game, right?
Yeah, most
I never
amazing
played
thing.
one of those, but I know. Yeah, I never played one of those games, but I know they were big. That people liked them on Game Boy, and it was a very obscure game that people liked, but it wasn't huge. Now enough people liked it and want to see her in more games and like indie made. So give enough time. What that Freedom Planet is like a fan made Sonic game. They just changed it around their own original stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, give it time. It wouldn't surprise me the least bit if we saw like an indie inspired, like Jet Grand Radio inspired game. Like I'm surprised they didn't take advantage of that with the Wii. That was like one of the perfect systems you could have done a Jet Grand Radio remake or a new one even.
And you know what? Maybe even on the Switch still holds the potential for like motion games. So a Jet Grand Radio could still like be well used on that. Maybe even better because like the Switch has some pretty darn good motion controls in it. So it's like why not? But yeah, it's just kind of sad though. To me, what bothers me is like it's almost that kind of thing. Like why do you always need to make something brand new when you have old stuff that hasn't been used to its full potential? You know what I mean? Like granted, yeah, you can always burn something out. I mean, once again, we go back to something like Tomb Raider. Probably by the time the 6th game came out, you burnt it out for most people, unless you're like super into it. I mean, I'll use this for example. Assassin's Creed. I loved fucking Assassin's Creed at the beginning, and I just got burnt out on it because it was just too much too quickly. So, you know what I mean? Like, you can burn something out, but you can also reinvigorate stuff. And some things just, I feel like they didn't even get to the burnt out point before they got kicked to the curb. You know, that they barely got far enough, but they still had something awesome that could still be utilized today.
I think that what's really going to keep video games going for a while is actually small indie-made games. And I don't want to sound like some hipster or anything like that, because I know nothing about programming or game design in that aspect. But I feel like that's where I'm seeing people usually more excited. I mean, yeah, they'll get excited about the new new God of War, or they'll get excited about the new Grand Theft Auto or something like that. But I notice whenever I hear positive buzz on a game, it's usually like, dude, have you tried this like little $20 game from the download store?
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, I get way more excited about those kind of games. Like, shit, when they said there's a Freedom Planet 2 coming out and a Guacamelee 2, I'm like, goddamn right there is. And that to me is like the awesome part. Now, I think those games still haven't caught to like, the general gamer or the casual gamer or anything like that. That's almost like more the eclectic retro gamer, I feel, that goes after those sort of things. But I do think that's kind of helping it out there. There's a certain big titles that will always kind of, I don't know, go for the, I guess the regular casual gamer, you know what I mean? Like your Call of Duties, your Maddens, I mean, those things will be there. But those small things, I think, is where you're getting some really original feelings, and like it doesn't just feel like run-of-the-mill gameplay and so on. It's like, oh, here's something different. You know.
No, sorry, the thing just totally blacked out for a minute. You totally went away, and I could just hear. I could hear some static, and then there's all the construction going on downstairs, so I just heard a bunch of buzzing. So my bad. Yeah, I'm just gonna. You can't see me, but I'm not in my head.
I could see you, but I just turned my camera off. Oh yeah, okay. But yeah, so it's like there's all kinds of things like that, and I think that's kind of the change. I just think it's one of those ones. I know I've mentioned this on the podcast many a times, but I'm like, I don't know why these like classic companies don't utilize that indie game design and really tap into that market. It's weird. I don't know why that. It's like one of those ones for all this like buzz you get from it. I'm surprised you don't just see fucking Konami and Sega and Capcom left and right having games fucking on there. Unless you're SNK.
So, what was that?
Unless you're SNK. SNK has fucking... They saw an opportunity, and they're like, shit, we got so many SNK games, we can release one, like, every week for, like, the next 5 years. This is our 5-year plan.
It's like people at the Nintendo office are, like, getting out of their car, walking up there, and, like, someone from SNK is already waiting at the door before they even open, like, hey, Frank, like, hey, what do you got? Another, can't even fucking think of the
Fatal
name.
Fury.
Fatal Fury. I was thinking the other one, King of Fighters. Yeah.
King of Fighters.
What do you got? Another King of Fighters remix? Yes, I do. Like, okay, $7.99 in the App Store. That'd be great. Awesome. All right, send me the shit.
You know, but I give SNK tons of credit for actually being like the only company to fucking exploit this market that nobody else seems to be taking advantage of. Strangely, I don't know why, but
I feel like other companies are slightly starting to take advantage of it. Not a whole lot, though. I mean, Sonic Mania is proof of that. I mean, they went to the fans to make a game, and then I think it's a... All right, what's the deal with Shantae? Was that a character that kind of just disappeared into obscurity and kind of like the license floating around, and some fans were like, hey, we want to make a game? Well, how'd that come about?
Well, that's from Way Forward, and I don't consider that really necessarily like an indie game, because that's like a full-fledged studio. So that's technically, I guess, like, it's not Capcom or Konami, but it's like the middle ground between that. It's not like an indie company of like 3 dudes in like a fucking basement making a game, or 1 dude even. That's a full-on team, full business. And what they did is, on the Game Boy game, they made it, but Capcom produced it. So that's the reason why it feels like it's a bigger, more official game. And then once Capcom's like, yeah, whatever, I guess we're not producing another one of these, then they decided to put it on the DSi back in the day, and that's how it started to come back. So you could almost say that even though they're not an indie company, they kind of like help pave the way for a lot of these kind of indie games and style, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're starting to see some games like apparently when making Zelda, the Breath of the Wild, they took a lot of criticism. They looked at a lot of the criticism they're getting, which is a lot of it being very linear. And I know that if you look long enough, you could say, well, this Zelda game can go here, this Zelda game can go there. But something where you don't have a fairy telling you what to do, where it's just kind of like, figure it out. And plus just the whole open worldness, and they're kind of probably trying to take advantage, like, dude, more of a... Is Dark Souls open world? I think it's Dark Souls open world, isn't it?
I think it's like kind of open world. It's not like Grand Theft Auto open world. It's weird. They always said they put those in the complaints, like, oh, Zelda hasn't been open world and it's linear and all that stuff. It's like, all I have to say is, like, did you not play the last like 5 Zelda games? Because they're pretty much, I mean, they're not like, I guess, like, there's 2 types, I guess, open world. I guess there's like story driven open world, and then there's like pure open world where there's not really a story. Or there's like a light story, because I feel like the only way you can do like a pure open world game is you don't really have a story. You know what I mean? If you want to tell a story, you got to kind of have like what I always call story open world, because even Grand Theft Auto is kind of story open world. You know what I mean? Like, you really only have 3 missions at a time you can do. You can't just do every mission in the game whenever you feel like it.
Well, even in Grand Theft Auto and say something like Red Dead Redemption, the game, like, because you would still have those moments where the game's open world, but you still can't leave this part of town. Why? Oh, well, they're doing construction. When's the construction done? When you're done doing all the shit over here, asshole? I'm like, oh, okay. And I always kind of viewed Zelda, I mean, I guess open world wasn't a term back when we played Ocarina of Time for the first time, but that always felt like pretty big at the time. It didn't feel like, I don't know, I feel like, I sometimes think people are kind of holding it up. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really like Breath of the Wild. It's a really fun game. But I think sometimes people are holding up this standard to, like, Zelda was all about exploring and figuring it out, not knowing where to go next. Like, you're holding it up just to the very first game. There's been a lot more games aside from the first one. Now, I think it's kind of cool. The newest game took a cue from the oldest game. But still, I mean, you know, there's still a lot to explore. You just couldn't go anywhere because you didn't get this item yet, which that's always been very Zelda, you know? I'm sure someone will be like, oh, well... Yeah.
Well, it's like, I'll say, it's like, because that's what Breath of the Wild literally is more like. It feels like a straight up sequel that if you like to Zelda 1 more than anything else. I mean, all the villains in it are generally Zelda 1 characters. It's very Zelda 1 like. I mean, the story, it has very little story in it. It's got very little, like, you know, major temples and so on. It's just got a bunch of little stuff in it. And it's not that it's not a cool game, but it's like, it's funny when people try to tell me that, like, oh, well, Ocarina of Times, it's not like open world. I'm like, it's pretty darn open world. You can literally do those temples almost in any order. There's only a couple of them that kind of precede the others, but for the most part, it's like you can kind of do things however you want. Like there's a way you probably shoot that's like more like a linear path that works better, but it's not saying that you can't do it like a different way too. So I don't know. I think it's just that one. It's just that there's just these modern kids that like they're used to a game that's like pure like if I can walk as far as I want that direction and go for it, that's open world. Where like I think in the old days it's like, well, there was technical boundaries because shit, you can't just have people walking all over the place or else the game's gonna fucking crash on them.
I'm kind of wondering if we're going to reach this point. This is kind of going back to indie developers and game design kind of stuff to an extent. Right now, our generation's all digging all like these brand new side-scrolling 18-bit, like 16-bit looking games.
18-bit.
I don't know why I said 18. I meant to say 8-bit, but it came out 18-bit. 8-bit, 16-bit looking games right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm wondering if what's going to happen is, are we going to reach a point where generation behind us, where they're going to actually, or I guess rather generation ahead of us actually is what I meant to say. Yeah, where the next generation, where when they like make throwback games, their throwback games have more of a like GameCube or PlayStation 2 kind of vibe to them. You know what I mean? Like. I'm not, or is that just one of those things like we just accept it because there's something appealing about 16-bit graphics, or something like GameCube or something like PlayStation 2? The graphics can look decent, but it's one of those things where it would still just look dated to them, and it wouldn't be as, wouldn't have that same oomph.
Well, here's the thing about that kind of stuff. Realistically, it's like PS2 and GameCube and Xbox era is really not that much different than games nowadays, because really. That was like the last, I guess you could say, like major jump in video games was that 2000 era. Because everything since then is like, it's more just, everything just gets refined. You know what I mean? The graphics get sharper. The detail gets wider. You know what I mean? The gameplay gets a little bit smoother. And that's, but at the end of the day, it's like you go back, like, perfect. Once again, we're going to tie this all back on the Tomb Raider. I'll play Tomb Raider Legend, which is a PS2 game. It doesn't feel that much different than nowadays, other than, maybe the controls aren't nearly as smooth as like Rise of the Tomb Raider. And the graphics obviously aren't nearly as, well, they're still sharp and clear because I'm playing on a computer, but you know what I mean? It's got a little bit blocky and everything like that, but for the most part, it's the same game. Where, 16-bit, 8-bit, 32-bit, that's all kind of like different. That's why I love that PS1 and N64, and even I will say Dreamcast era, because that's kind of in that same area, and Sega Saturn. It's because that was all the time period where nobody really knew what the fuck they were doing yet, because nobody had done this yet. So you just every game was almost like an experiment. So you have these styles of games that you don't see anymore because people came to a point where like, you know what works well? Run around controls, movable camera. Same with first-person shooters. That's why I think first-person shooters all kind of feel the same, is because they figured out the formula and just went with it. You know what I mean? It's like, well, this is the formula for success. Why try anything different? Where when you play a lot of PlayStation games, you're like, oh shit, look at this experimental game. Like, whether it's bad or good, it's cool that it's different, And that's where things like where Resident Evil has its style, is because it's like, well, we need to have these camera angles and pre-rendered backgrounds because this will help it load, plus it will look nicer on what the graphics we have. And it's almost like those limitations created these cool styles that nowadays you're like, well, why would you have fucking camera angles? You know what I mean? You could have a movable camera. Like, what? Your fucking computer can't handle that shit? But it's almost like those limitations is what, like, why I love PlayStation. Like, I can always go back and play PlayStation so much. Like, there's so many games that, like, I can go back and just jump into it, like, oh, dude, this is fucking great. And it's funny because people will tell me, they're like, dude, I just can't go back to those old games. Like, how can you do it? It's like, I don't know. It's just, maybe it was just like, that's just, to me, is a time period that's just awesome. I mean, I'm going to say nostalgia definitely takes it over. But I just don't feel like, to me, that like a lot of that stuff still feels fresh and different. I think because people don't do it anymore, and that it has this almost like different vibe, and it's just almost like the lost like creation of games, because people romanticize 8-bit and 16-bit all day long. But the 32-bit's kind of the, you'll find a handful of indie games I found recently that make games in that style, but it's still so rare.
I'm thinking, well, that's a good point right there, because it was like just kind of this weird experimental ground for whatever game came out. And depending on the game, I can go back and play it.
Mm-hmm.
I notice if it's a game that I heard about and then I finally go back and play it, and it's something from PlayStation or 64 era, I just have trouble getting into it. And, it makes sense because, I didn't grow up with this game, so it's like, what the fuck is this one? But I'm wondering, because you showed me there's that one, and it's kind of like that randomly generated Resident Evil kind of parody. Was it called Antidote, or what was it called? Not parody,
Vaccine,
but like,
yeah, not
Vaccine.
Yes, it's not it's like an homage.
Homage, yeah, that was the word I was looking for. And it's one of those, and like, but you walk up to it, like, it's a plant. What do you think else was going to do, or something like that? Like, just little jabs at people who like play Resident Evil a lot. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if we're going to see more of that. Because, like you said, that was kind of this weird experimental thing, so it's probably not as romanticized as is, Super Nintendo or Genesis, because they got it down by that point before they jumped on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think this is the other thing, too, because it's like, you talk to a kid, you talk to, like, somebody who's not, like, I guess, in our generation, and they mostly look at 64 and PlayStation like, dude, I don't even get fucking near those systems. Like, what the fuck is that shit? But they might be able to appreciate a Super Nintendo game, oddly enough. But I think it's one of those ones there, and that's the thing, is unless you were there, I think it's hard to have appreciation for it. So, because I found another game that was like Vaccine. It's called Back in 1994. And it's done in that same kind of, it's more like, almost like more like Alone in the Dark, and it's from a Japanese guy, so he's going after this like 3DO game is what his like main influence is. And so there is people that have that, and it's not that there, but it's also like, you see the reviews on Steam where people are like, this is fucking stupid, what's wrong with this game? Why does it have camera angles? Like, they don't get what the game's going for. So I think it's kind of it's a target audience that's like very small and hardcore. I think there's enough to make indie games for it, but I don't think it's going to be a market like you see from like Shovel Knight and Shantae and Guacamelee and Steam, or fucking Steam Heist and so on. Like, it's not going to be in that same category where you can have this really beautiful like 2D art that's represented. I think it's one of those ones, it's just for a select group of people. And those people exist, it's just they're in a much smaller number. Because there's a lot of people that even though they played PlayStation and N64, they almost just, they go, well, I have great memories of it, but I don't go back and play that stuff. That stuff's too old for me. I can't handle the controls. I can't handle, like, the frame rate. I can't handle the fucking fog and all that kind of stuff. All the things that kind of hold people back. Where, like, I relish in that. Like, tank controls to me, I'm like, fucking tank controls for life. You know what I mean? Like, that actually makes Resident Evil better. You can't play Resident Evil technically without tank controls, strangely enough. You see the fucking controls they try to put on, like, you don't have to have them on, but when they did the remastered ones on PS4, they instantly put runaround controls in there, and you see exactly why you can't have those in Resident Evil. It just doesn't work in that type of gameplay style. You just get fucked over by those controls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say that every once in a while you look back on some of those older games, like that 64, PS1 era, and they reached that point where, like, oh no, they had it down near the end. It was just, GameCube and PlayStation 2 was the next step. You look at some games like, no, these guys had it too down because they put too much shit in there, like Donkey Kong 64.
Mm-hmm. Well,
like, there's almost too much shit to do. It's like, are you serious? You're going to collect all these fucking bananas? On all these coins for each of these characters? And still do the side quests? What the fuck?
Well, that's more of that. That's a rare part. That's a rare kind of thing. And the thing is, the people that really like fucking rare games love that kind of collecting thing. I don't care for collecting shit. Like, that's, to me, has never been interesting. You know what I mean? Like, I like rare games, like, as their gameplay, but sometimes, like, the overabundance of different items you have to collect is always a little bit annoying sometimes. But yeah, it's like they had that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that there's not 64 and PlayStation games like that you turn on and you go, holy fuck, what the, you know what I mean? Like, I'm glad I didn't spend even $75 for this back in the day. Like, there's just some things that just, a good game's not a good game. I'm not, defending everyone. But it's like like GoldenEye to me, GoldenEye is always GoldenEye and it's always fucking amazing. You get games like Resident Evil. Resident Evil never gets old to me. Fucking even Silent Hill, even though its graphics are not on par with Resident Evil, it still holds up really fucking good. And so on. I mean, I'll say this. Here's an example. The old Tomb Raider is a perfect example of a game that's like, it's cool as like a nostalgia flashback, but it would be tough to go play that old Tomb Raider all the way through And I mean, not saying you wouldn't enjoy it, and you probably would get into it a little bit more the farther you got into it. But it's almost like, well, there's a Tomb Raider anniversary that almost fixed it. Tomb Raider was a game that almost needed like a little bit more development to kind of like bring it to that next level. Like having the camera spin around you makes a big fucking difference instead of just randomly going like, I hope this jump makes it.
Only one way to find out.
Yeah, and then you're like, because I want to say it's like on those old Tomb Raiders, like I remember as a kid being like those games like being very like frustrating and being like almost like so then when I think about Tomb Raider 2, I almost like sit back and I go like I haven't played Tomb Raider 2 in so long, but that's the feeling it gives me. Is I gotta pause like, yeah, those are some hard times. like it was like I think of it as like a rough childhood. It's like how I imagine like Tomb Raider 2, and I know that's the game that people look the most fondly at. But when I think of Tomb Raider 2, it's like, yeah, it's fun. There's great things about it. But I also remember all like the nuisances of like, shit, I remember how far away those checkpoints were. And god damn it, all those fucking deaths.
When you say that game like gave you like a rough childhood, almost I get this image of you like as a child, like, you know, like in a black and white, like 1920s, like with a group of like rough-looking shantytown kids with all black eyes, holding sticks and rocks, like 'cause that's what they had to play. And you have a copy of Tomb Raider 2 in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like this rough time period, and that's the thing. It's like I love like the little modern things that help make like older games better. You know what I mean? Like there's certain old things I don't care for. Like I don't care for like punishing difficulties where like when you die you start way fucking back. Like that's not fun. That's just annoying. If I have to keep doing the same small stuff over again that I already completed and then have some challenging thing come up at the end, that's, you know what I mean? That's where I feel save states. Like I never think of save states as being like cheating. I think save states are like, they're just time consuming. You still had to do the work to get to where you're at, but you don't have to keep doing the same like small task over and over again because you already did it. You know what I mean? You boom. You're just creating your own continue points. Is what I feel like at the end of the day. And I mean, I guess you could exploit to the point where like you do damage at a boss and you still have your health, so you save again. And then you go a little bit farther and you save again. You save like almost like every like 20 seconds. Well, yeah, I guess you could sort of exploit it by that standard. But for the most part, I feel like that just makes games kind of better. Like, I like those little bit of modern things that we can have, like, that mostly, they've come from, like, emulators, but they kind of can get to that point where it's like, oh, this makes a gameplay feel much better, you know?
Yeah. No, I was going to say, because we were talking about how games reach this point of, video games reaching that point of, like, okay, they got this, they got the, sorry, wow. Long day. you got how like they got side scrollers down, and they got to that point where they're just starting to get 3D down and all that before they jumped over to the PlayStation 2 and GameCube era. I was thinking another one that people don't talk about a whole lot. I know you don't forget it. Is Dreamcast. That whole period of Dreamcast games, because that seems kind of be like the one, that weird jumping off point from. I don't really know which generation Dreamcast really belongs to. Would you say it belongs to PlayStation, like, you know, PlayStation 2 and GameCube era, or would you say that belongs more to, you know, would you say it like belongs to PlayStation 1 or like 64?
You know, the way that I look at Dreamcast, because it is the system that I go back to almost more than any other system, and it's funny, it's only like in America, we only had like less than 3 glorious years. Because really, you think about it, it fucking came out like, I think it came out in like October or something like that in 99, so that's barely even a year. And then you got 2000, its biggest year, and then you got your final games of 2001. But what the Dreamcast represents to me is I will say this, I think it's more of an actual PlayStation Xbox or PlayStation 1 and N64 era. But it was like, let's take the PlayStation and the N64 games and we'll just make them as dialed in as they can get. Now, granted, I think it also is the footsteps into PS2, GameCube, Xbox. It's this weird like middle ground system that's almost like, here's these old games done really fucking well because we got them really dialed in now, and then here's some new stuff that you're going to see that's different. And I think that's what made the Dreamcast be that system of why people look at it so fondly, even though it's kind of like, it's totally like, in retrospect, you almost can look at it like, oh, it's this failure system. Jeez, it was barely even out for like, it's not even really out for 3 years, you know what I mean? But it...
They for splits... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just you can say what you want.
I'm not sure if we even talked about this in the podcast, but for a split second, they were hinting at there's a possibility of a Dreamcast Mini.
They were kind of saying things like that. Now, I want to say what I've always wished for ever since I've been a little kid. Okay, you know they always got kind of like retro systems, as in, you know, you get like the Retron 6, and you can plug your Genesis games in, and your Super Nintendo, and your regular Nintendo, and Game Boy Advance, and blah, 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 blah. What I've always wanted, and it'd be awesome if it just came from first party. Now, I don't really know how Sega's going to make money off it other than selling a system, but it's just a disc system, and it's a Sega system, and it plays Sega CD, Sega Saturn, and Sega Dreamcast. So all the disc systems of Sega in one awesome unit, and it'd be, you know, it'd be cool if you could plug in, you know, Dreamcast controllers in the front, Sega Genesis controllers on the side, and or, you know, maybe you don't even need Sega Genesis controllers because the Sega Saturn controller is so similar to a Genesis one. But, you know, you could plug in Saturn controllers there. Like, that would be fucking awesome. I mean, if you really want to top it off, I think, like, the ultimate cool Sega system is on the back of it. You could plug in your 32X and Genesis cartridges and even Master and maybe Game Gear too. That would be fucking amazing. But I would love just to see a Sega system that could play all the CD bases in one neat, cool, compact system.
Mm-hmm. That'd be pretty cool. I mean, I imagine someone probably made that fan-made, but I don't see that being on mass market because Sega Saturn had trouble selling as well as Game Gear. So, I mean, but I could definitely see if you look long enough, you could probably see someone trying to get that off the ground or trying to get one custom-made, probably.
Yeah, I mean, and sadly enough, Sega Saturn, it's like, this is the thing what you can learn in life. No system that's ever been the most expensive system has ever done well. It is like, literally, you pretty much have like, the only system that can be expensive and still sell well is called a PC. Everything else it has never worked. In like the last like 40 years, the expensive system always fails. So it always makes me wonder like why people keep trying that over and over again. Now I know obviously somebody wants to have like, well, here's the system almost like for the people who want an expensive system. And once again, I guess it always comes back to, what's that? That's called a PC. If you want to have a $2,000 rig, go for it. You know what I mean? But like the Sega Saturn being $100 more than the PlayStation just screwed it over. You know, I think that's where Nintendo's always just done good because it's like the system's always $200. Shit, we put it up to $300 now. Boy, is that expensive now in, you know, 2000s.
Wasn't the Switch, was that 300 or was that
300.
250? I thought they bumped the Switch down to 250 or some point.
I want to say the
Maybe it was 300. No, it doesn't matter.
I want to say it was because I want to say that the Wii was 250 and it was like, oh, you're fucking going big, and it was like really, it's like not a big deal at that time period. And then the Wii U, I want to say was 250. Maybe the Switch was only 250. I thought it was 300 the whole time, but I could be wrong. But But yeah, it's just that kind of thing. But it's like, I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah, you won't see a mass market. I've never seen like anything you could buy off the internet that was like what I'm talking about, the Sega style, like Sega CD, 32X, and Dreamcast all together. I know that you keep hearing this thing like somebody's putting together like an advanced like kind of Dreamcast that's got like HDMI out. You could plug memory cards into it and so on. It's just got all these little extra bells and whistles in there, which would be, I probably would buy that if that was the case because I fucking play Dreamcast more than a lot of other systems and so on. I wish Sega Saturn was, I always wish you could play Sega Saturn games on Dreamcast. I always feel like that would have been, that might even helped out fucking Dreamcast maybe a tad bit more. But I feel Dreamcast was almost like destined, it would always be behind Xbox and PS2 and GameCube no matter what, just because it didn't have HD, it wasn't DVDs. That was what was going to fuck it over more than anything else, was not being a DVD system, you know? Mm-hmm. But for what it is, it's fucking amazing.
Well, they're also pitching about the idea about N64 like mini, something like that. Which, hypothetically speaking, let's say they do that, which I can definitely see them doing that. Mm-hmm. If they do, let's take all the obvious ones off. What's like 2 games you want? The obvious ones being like Mario, Star Fox, Mario Kart, Ocarina, Majora's Mask, Smash Brothers,
Mario Party 2, probably.
Mario Party, F-Zero. Let's take all the obvious ones off the table. Like, what are probably 2 or 3 games for that you'd really want that you might not as likely, but you'd really hope would be on there?
Well, this is the only thing I think is the hard part about selling this. I'm going to say this before I even mention what I would think, is that I think people are going to have a hard time comprehending because some of the biggest N64 games Nintendo can't have on there. That's the thing, is because either they're going to be a rare game or they're going to be a licensed game. Because I mean, like, obviously for me, I would say GoldenEye would be like the must, but that wouldn't be on there. You know what I mean? But it's going to be hard to try to sell it. People are like, what do you mean GoldenEye's not on there? You know what I mean? And then the rare games, you're not going to have Jet Force Gemini. You're not going to have Perfect Dark. You're not going to have Banjo-Kazooie. You're not going to have
Buck Bumble.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have Buck Bumble.
I'm joking.
That's not even. I don't think that's even a rare game. You're not going to have.
It's not, but
you're not going to have Conquer. That's the other big one. Oh, you probably wouldn't have Conquer anyways because they probably wouldn't want to make the system mature. But
well, no, I'm thinking like just on that weird like fairy godmother. Like, what would you have on this? Like, really, you're stopping strictly at the video games? Yes, we're just stopping at the video games. Okay, fairy godmother. Well, I guess I don't know. I guess the obvious ones would probably be like Jet Force Gemini. I think if GoldenEye, that's when they'd struggle to get on there. And then this is a weird one, but either Pod Racers or Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, see, that's the other. There's another two that would be totally sweet. Body Harvest, I would be like really ecstatic if that was on there. I know they're not going to put that on there, but here's the thing though: is they'll make the thing and then it'll be super easy to mod. So next thing you know, you'll be able to put all your N64 games on it right away. But you'll have a nice little like portable mini N64 that has HDMI output. Like that's what's going to make it kind of cool. Because it's like right now, it's like I got that cartridge, which is like one of the coolest inventions fucking anybody's ever kind of made, and it's called fuck. Why am I trying to blank on what it is right now?
Turbo 64 or something?
No, it's God damn, I can't.
You showed it to me last time I came over.
Yeah, well, it's like one of those ones like, and they make it's called an EverDrive. That's what it's called. And they made, they originally they had one for Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis and the Game Boy Advance and so on, which is all cool and all, but it's like one of those ones like, well, I could just emulate those games easily on other stuff. But it's like the 64 one, what made that one seem way more amazing is because here's the thing, you could play a Super Nintendo game or a Genesis game with another controller, and it's kind of fine. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's cool to have the regular Super Nintendo controller or Genesis controller and so on. But at the end of the day, like, if you're playing a Super Nintendo game with a PlayStation controller, it's not that much different, But the 64 controller is always like, just try to play, perfect example is like, you play a 64 game with like a GameCube controller that should work generally fine, it still feels kind of odd, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
that was the one thing. It's like when you played Ocarina of Time on the GameCube collection, though, I mean, it's still an awesome version, but it is that one little thing where it's like, oh yeah, the Ocarina is not nearly as fun to play because it just doesn't work nearly as well with the C-Stick and so on. Like that 64 controller really is almost like a must for the 64 games, and that's where that EverDrive is like, oh shit, I got every 64 game on an SD card, plug it right into my N64, I can play 4 players and so on. One of the coolest things ever. Like, that is just pure amazing. I mean, hypothetically, if there was, like, that fairy godmother thing, it would be so cool. It's not possible, really, but, like, just imagine if they made, like, a disc that you could plug into, like, your PlayStation or Sega Saturn or even Dreamcast, and it just had every single game on it. Like, think how amazing that would be.
Fairy godmother's not that powerful.
Yeah,
she can't pull
She's
that
like,
one
shit,
off.
your ass, how much fucking memory do you think I got? But, I mean, I guess, like...
Shenron couldn't pull that off. He come in like, sorry, rights are complicated.
Yeah, exactly. It's just because, the games are so big and so on. But yeah, it is that thing there where it would be cool. But I love all the little things that people invent when people make, like, sweet setups just for retro systems and so on. Like, even the SNES Classic, it in itself is, like, a cool little portable, like, retro console that you could just, like, whip in a bag and take it to your buddy's house, plug it in, and then just like start playing all kinds of old games, Sega games, Super Nintendo games, and so on, and gives you the Nintendo feeling. It's portable. It's awesome. It's like it makes for a great little like emulator console.
I don't see myself doing that shit with the Switch. Like the Switch ad was making it out to be like, just take it with you wherever you want. And, like, fuck that. That thing's like $300, $250 to $300. I'm not plus whatever games inside that. That thing looks like it could break easily. That thing is not leaving my fucking room. Maybe the plane. Maybe. But
if there's terrorists
like,
on the plane, I don't know.
Like, take me, leave the Switch.
There's like some guy's like, dude, if you just hit the terrorist over the head with your Switch, he's like, fuck you, man, I am not gonna hit the terrorist. Or he's like, could you keep your voice down? What are you doing? No, fuck this, I'm getting up. Just start walking the back. Terrorist's like, what are you doing? He's like, he wanted me they hit you over the head with the switch. He's like, oh, fucking asshole. You know, shit, if someone's going to die first, it's going to be him. Good, I didn't like sitting next to him anyways.
Fist bump the ISIS guy, go take that, sit down at your seat.
He's like, hey, you know, you want a card to ISIS? Get you unlimited Nintendo games. Kid you not, dude. That's part of the plan. That's why I joined. I got my whole family signed up. You know, on the American TV, they talk about it in like a negative way. But believe me, when you get there, it's like hanging out with the gang just like you remember it. Picture N64 parties every night. That's what ISIS is all about. Sure, you got to do one little terrorist act here and there. I mean, that's kind of part of the job. Shit, I mean, your job probably, I bet you got some shitty things you don't like doing at work, don't you?
You got a point, yeah.
You're like, oh, this ISIS guy's very relatable.
Every night in the ISIS tent, we just like play Mario Party or Mario Kart, Smash Brothers once in a while. Maybe if you're feeling, you know, kind of different, maybe some Jet Force Gemini. Dude, you know Jet Force Gemini? Dude, check out this tattoo I got. Oh,
he pulls out, it's like on his fucking dick. It's just like, oh my god. You're like, why is it on your dick? I don't know. I thought it'd be cool. You know what I mean? That's it. That's just what we do. That's what we do. It's what ISIS is about.
Like the rocket launcher to like from. He's like, all right, praise Olaf, fist bump. Yeah.
Shit. I don't know. That's a pretty cool guy. But I can't remember where I was going with this. The Switch. Like that's the thing is like I don't really refer to the Switch as a handheld. I still consider it like it's a console that just happens to have the feature that I can pick it up easily. That's how I kind of look at it.
Yeah. It's one of. They're trying to make it walk that line, but when I first bought that thing, I was scared to touch it and pick it up. I was scared. It was so fragile. Like, felt so like I imagine it's kind of like how the feeling I had when I held that thing. It's probably I imagine what a parent feels like when they hold their newborn for the first time.
Yeah, like don't fucking drop this. Don't fucking drop this. Don't fucking drop this.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where I almost like, okay, it's going to stay right there on the TV. And it took me forever to actually get used to the idea of holding it and playing it, because the whole thing with that is I got a bad temper when I lose at games. Mm-hmm. And I had like just this vision of me just getting so frustrated and then breaking it over my knee. I don't know. I just had this vision of that. So I'm like, no, it's going to stay hooked up to the TV. And then slowly but surely, kind of got more used to just playing it almost like it was a handheld. But once again, not letting it leave the house, really.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones. It's not saying that like you can't take it out, but it's just like it's not like, you know, the last Game Boy I thought that was actually like super easily portable was Game Boy SP. Everything since then I feel like has become less and less, because even my 3DS doesn't feel like something that you can just like whip out of your pocket. Like I got it in its case. The case is not big enough to fit in your pocket. You practically need a backpack to carry the case. So I feel like it's not like as portable as you know what I mean?
I remember playing first time in a long time. I remember like when I first moved here, I'd take my 3DS with me to a lot of places. Like if I was on a long bus ride, I was playing that for a while, or a couple times I just go out to the park just to go like, it's a nice, beautiful day outside. I want to go play video games. I just bring my 3DS with me and sit in the park playing it. So,
yeah, no, it's like one of those ones like you could still do it, but it just doesn't feel like the Game Boy SP was literally like the last one's like, oh shit, they thought of everything. You close it and it protects the screen and it fits in your pocket. Right on. But yeah, the Switch is
by the warranty.
Yeah, the Switch is one of those ones where it's like, okay, let's get in this laptop case and okay, we're transporting it. We got to wrap it up real well now. Even though it's in a case, I want it to be wrapped even more. And so
you're going to put in the 6-digit code to lock it.
But I will say, it is kind of cool when you're like, oh, fuck, I got to play. I'm playing a game, and it's like, oh, I got to go do something and sit down, and I have to go wait for like an hour or two. Wait a second. Click. You know, that is kind of neat. I mean, I know if there was internet connection, I could do the same thing with my PlayStation, but then you know, you got to have the internet connection and everything like that. But whatever. You could still do it on the PSP Vita.
Yeah, I could see myself possibly taking it on the plane, but then like on a plane, but then once I get to my hotel or whatever, it's not leaving the hotel. I'm not going to be taking that thing with me to a coffee shop or some shit.
Well, that's always like, I hate those ads you would see for like PSP, where it's like the guy's just got like in his back pocket, no fucking case or anything.
They're playing Franz Ferdinand over it.
And it's just like, the screen, what are you, crazy? You know what I mean? I mean, I know nowadays people are so used to like, oh, it's a screen, look at it, it's a screen. But there was a time period where it was like, you don't fucking touch the screen. You never touch the screen. You fucking protect that screen. It was like, that was just how it was. You don't. You touch the screen, you lose a finger.
We're going by ISIS rules here.
Yeah, I know. That was old ISIS rules. They're like, Yeah, they're pretty serious about that. You touch a Game Boy Color screen there, it's not good. It's not good. Somebody lost.
Even if you're playing,
even if you're playing it on your phone, you can't touch the screen. Well, how do you? It's like, yeah, I know. That's the one weird rule. I don't get it either. It's just,
even if you're playing like a DS, you still have to use the stylus. You can't use your finger. It has to be a stylus.
Yeah, it has to
They're
be a stylus.
Very strict about that.
You know, it's just one of those ones. I know that was always the hard one too. Is like, I remember my DS? Like, are you kidding me? Touch it with my finger, you heathens! You don't do that. You pull the stylus out every single time, so it's very odd and cumbersome. I finally got to the point where like on my 3DS, like new, I'm like, fuck it, I'll just touch the screen. The screens are strong enough nowadays. Whatever. I got my little cloth to clean it. I passed out.
Yeah.
I'm at that point where it's like, you kind of get the point, it's like, you could always just buy another one. And here's the thing, by the time, if you actually did even wear that thing out, you're going to probably want a new one in 5 years anyways, so whatever. Just one of those things.
My 3DS gets a little bit of attention every so often. That's more of like, I'll pick up like a Pokemon or a Zelda game, play it like crazy, and then leave it alone for a while and pick it back up. That's kind of with most video games this day and age. Like Zelda has been sitting there for, I guess, a year and a half now, and it's just a game that I pick up and I'll play it like crazy and try to unlock this, try to unlock that. And I already know how the thing ends, and I'm not really... This one, not that the story's bad, but it doesn't have the most amazing story, so it's more of just a fun game to explore and walk around, so I don't have that drive to, I gotta know how it ends, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I always had that fear for, like, stopping a game midway through that it's going to make it that much more... See, Zelda's one of those few that you could, that new Zelda, but most video games, you just pretty much are fucked if you, like, come back to it 6 months later, because then you're like, I don't know how to play the game, I don't remember what I was doing, and so on. Like, sometimes, I kid you not, sometimes if I take a couple days off from a game and I come back, I'm already lost in what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, it doesn't take very long, so... It's like, once I'm committed, I got to go the distance.
Yeah, the only two games I have that are this generation that I have for the Switch, and I feel bad saying this, because I know there's better games than one of these games I'll have to name off. Zelda and Sonic Forces. Everything else is kind of just small, indie, either like, oh, here's an old Nintendo game, or an old Capcom game, or here is like a small indie, like $20, maybe a $30 game on here. Nothing big like Mario or Mario Kart yet, or no Monster Hunter or anything like that. So I feel bad. Like a Sonic Forces is on here, but not something like Mario Odyssey yet. And I'm not gonna lie, I do feel a little shameful regarding that. But Sonic Forces was kind of cheap, so I think they knew, like, we know what this is.
Yeah, they're gonna do a little undercut in the market there, and it kind of worked in that favor, but yeah, all kinds of good stuff there.
I would have mad. I would have been mad if it was $60. I probably wouldn't have bought it if it was $60 actually. So.
Yeah, one of those kind of things. But that's probably a good place to wrap all this up in our 350th episode of our Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire generation. That's where we're at now. We're getting to those points in the games. You know, we've passed the red and blue mark. We've passed the gold and silver. Now we're here at the old Game Boy Advance section. The part that's like one of the few Pokemon games I never really played because it kind of came out. I didn't have a Game Boy Advance at that point, and by the time I finally did, the game was already kind of like there and gone, sadly, and it was just like other things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we'll just have to push it to what comes after that, after Ruby and Sapphire.
Diamond and Pearl.
Black and White?
No, Diamond and Pearl.
Okay.
So... getting there, but always good times on Old Man Orange. It's always fun to kind of look back and kind of break down like what makes video games work and why they're there in the past and not in the future and so on, and what we could always wish for. But fun stuff to always be had. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this wasn't even like a video game planned episode. It just kind of happened that way.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even know what was going to happen, but that's just sort of it's how it goes. But till then, check out oldmanorange.com for more podcasts, cartoons, comic books, so on, and more. And till then, we'll see you some other time. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Dunigan.
350.
Later, folks.
Thanks again for listening to the Old Man Orange podcast. Be sure to check out oldmanorange.com for more podcasts, comics, animations, videos, and a whole lot more. You can easily support the show by buying something from one of our Amazon links on the website or in the show's description itself. Doesn't cost you a penny, but every single thing you buy from there just by using that link to take you to Amazon helps us out a bit. You can also really help the show out, though, by spreading the word the good old-fashioned way and rate and review us on all the sites that you find this podcast. Anything from iTunes to Podbean to Newgrounds, YouTube, You name it, any little bit helps. Give a sub and share it to your friends, family, any jamoke you see out on the street. You let them know about Old Man Orange Podcast. And be sure to check out the Old Man Orange comic book Pizza Boys on both Amazon and Comixology. Till then, we'll see you some other time.